This cemetery does have quite a few issues. From the natural point of view, it's all built on clay and the clay moves. So quite often a lot of the memorials have been damaged from ground movement, quite a significant number of them. We'd have another phenomenon called coffin collapse. Over time, the coffins rot out, drop in, and then of course all the soil on top slowly comes down into that hole. And that's why the predominant leaning happens on these memorials. It's the ground movement filling up that coffin. So that's the sort of natural issues we have. But one of the biggest problems around here, not so much nowadays, is willful damage, which is a bit disheartening, but it hasn't happened lately. And I think the more work we do here, the nicer it looks, the less people want to damage it.
The other issue is we have trees coming down. So we have a large amount of headstones that are damaged and in poor condition. Since the time I've been here, and I have predecessors as well that worked on this project, every year we'll come in, we have a budget, we'll be able to work on anything from 3 to 10, maybe 12 headstones a year that Auckland Council will fund. We have a priority list. So we'll go around and do a survey every year. We'll prioritise things that are at the most risk and are at the most historical value, and those are the ones that we will use that year's budget to do. Now, the added bonus is when private families get involved and they found the family grave, and they then want to put their money into the cemetery as well and get some more headstones done that way.
It's always quite difficult to know where to go, what to do next. We generally share the time between this side of Simon Street and the other side. So we'd probably do a couple of years over here and a couple of years over there. We try and pick on the things which are in most danger of disappearing or are actually dangerous. So there have been quite dangerous memorials here, which we've had to get onto. This was a group of 3 we did about 5 years ago in extremely poor condition. There was literally no way of saving them. So we've ended up having to renew them completely, so new foundations. We actually put them back in reinforced concrete and replaster them. And so as you can see, this monument was in several pieces. They were all found in the mud. The stone itself is very rotten, but we repair it using lime mortars, which is very similar to the stone itself, so it's very compatible. So with this particular one, we had to put a steel plate on the back and rebuild it onto the plate. Without it, it wouldn't survive. Literally a strong wind would blow it over. We do, if possible, try and work in clusters. So if you have 3 close together which are severely damaged, it can be a cheaper way of doing it. The one at the back there, the top was off and it was severely leaning, and all the surround had disappeared. It was sort of sitting on a lump of mud practically. So all that had to be redone. And it was the same with this. The surround was completely collapsed, totally beyond repair. So this is an example of when we've had to literally rebuild from scratch to what we believe was the original dimensions from what we could discover. Never try and make anything look brand new. I'm quite against that in most cases. And we want to try and keep the patina of the graveyard, should I say. So we don't over clean things. We try not to add anything which wasn't there before, except in cases like this where you absolutely have to. You have no choice but to put in something like a steel plate. It's not pretty, but it will save it from being lost, basically. So we should try to get the ones which are in most danger done first. There's obviously quite a bit of cost involved. The council just has a small budget every year, so we try and do as many as we can for that budget and the most vulnerable ones that we can fit in. This is a particularly dangerous monument. It's lean as such that at some point all that will just slide off onto the floor. Because none of it's pinned, it's all just relying on its weight. So you can see a tree has grown up underneath it and it's just pushing the whole thing over. So this is a piece of paving from the original. This tree has come up in underneath. It's growing over the top, but it's also pushing underneath this side. It's growing right around it and also pushing it over. We're not allowed to touch the trees, so the suggestion is to pick it all up and move it this way, keep it within the surround of the grave, but just move the monument this way, rebuild it on new foundations, and obviously get it nice and straight. A lot of them are on leans. They will keep leaning and eventually they'll fall off, so they're actually a health and safety issue as well. See, these are problematic from their sheer size. The cost to dismantle that and put it back together again would be huge. But the foundations are sinking, So when the coffins finally fall in, the ground above has to sink down, and that tends to make the monuments move one way or the other. So we're keeping an eye on this one. We're not too worried about it at the moment. I don't think it's moved much in the last sort of 20 years, so at the moment we're just keeping that one on hold. With this particular monument, it had sunk in the ground quite significantly on the right-hand side. Like the top of this had fallen off because it was at such a lean. Originally they weren't jointed, they just sit there on their own weight. And really the main job was to get it back out the ground, which is quite tricky because the whole thing probably weighed about 3 or 4 tons. But that was the first step. We stripped off all the granite, jacked it all back out the ground, reconcreted a new foundation in, and once that was stable, we could rebuild the actual monument itself. Trickiest parts of that, for instance, is getting the obelisk on. That weighs about 300 kilos. So we've got sort of some specialised equipment that we bring in to lift that safely and get it on top. There's been a significant amount of work, but we're just going through the finishing stages now. The last thing we were doing is fixing the marble. There was quite a few areas which were completely missing. So what we do is cut a template and cut a new piece of marble to fit, and then glue it on. You can try and match it up the best you can, but obviously this marble's 100 odd years old, so you don't always get a perfect match. This area was cracked into possibly 30 pieces. We had to dig around the monument to lift it out the ground because it had sunken quite considerably. And whilst we were digging it out, we were finding scraps of marble here and there. These are all cracks, and we've added a little bit of coloured fill. This was particularly bad in this area. There was quite a bit missing, but not enough to piece in. So we want to keep the original marble, so we do just use glue filler. But then coming into a completely missing piece at the end there. So that's a new piece which has been cut to shape what was not there. But we try and save absolutely everything. So any small scrap of marble we find, we try and work out where it came from and put it back on. So conserving absolutely everything we can find. And then just replace what is completely missing, which is what we did on here. Because once it's gone, it's gone. We do search the local area. I found pieces 100 metres away which belong to this monument. So we spend a bit of time looking for everything we can, and then when we've got everything we can find, we go from there. I find working on these monuments incredibly rewarding. You'll take a memorial that is practically destroyed and you feel quite proud of the job and very pleased. Lucky enough to be given the opportunity to repair them. The big brick wall behind is the Parker grave. Now this was the first surround we got permission to do in the cemetery. It was really just a pile of bricks on the floor, along with a monument on the floor. We actually had to get an engineer in. We had to take it all apart, dig down quite a lot and put a retaining wall in there, and with new drainage in it and all sorts of things. So that was a few months' work, but all the bricks are original. There was actually evidence that this was extended. The original grave site came to about here, and then this area was put on later. So I imagine they must have bought another plot to fit some more people in. We've only started doing the large stuff in the last probably 8 years, and we would have done around 10 of these, of this sort of size and this sort of condition. It is quite involved. You have to build a lot of lifting equipment, very heavy duty lifting equipment. It can take a couple of weeks easily to get it all done properly. Well, a lot of the feedback we get from people coming through the cemetery is they're very pleased with the sort of work we're doing. They're saying it really it's nice to see the heritage of the place being upkept. It makes it a lot more beautiful experience to come around and not seeing all this sort of decaying piles of rubble everywhere. They've asked about it, and I'm really very pleased that the council is doing something about it.